Netflix's success is due in part to its leaders' willingness to take risks.
So much experimentation here.
Yeah.
And I think about all the things you've expanded Netflix into. Original content, then into creating originals for countries all around the world, consumer products, games, experiences. What is your strategy when it comes to figuring out how and when to try new things?
Don't be afraid. There's a lot of trial and error in this business. There's a lot of trial and error in all businesses. This particular one is dependent on the taste and the trends of the public. So if you're not kind of being a little bit flexible about what people are going to like, you can find yourself in this habit of just keep doing the same thing until it doesn't work. The last iteration, the one that didn't work, is outrageously expensive. So you should be thinking about the new one, long before you need it. Can you buy yourself into a big franchise? Not likely. You could be very lucky and pick something that just explodes out of the box, but it's very, very rare.
You can't necessarily predict what's going to turn out.
If we would have said we're trying to make Squid Game, we were trying to make a global sensation, we would have failed at it for sure. We found out the recipe is, if you want to make a sensational show around the world, make it great.
You've done some amazing and sometimes wild experiments.
When we did the Tyson-Jake Paul fight,
How did you come up with that?
we're talking about Jake Paul wanted to come and do, a boxing match with Netflix. And so we had the relationship with him. And it was trying to figure out, okay, who does he box? And we just thought it had, definitely part sports, part entertainment. He had, talked about Tyson. It just seemed like such a great idea, an exciting idea. It created a lot of conversation. It was really stunty. And what I love about my job is that we can try that.
How do you foster a culture that encourages that?
I talk about it a lot, actually, with the teams. Are we taking enough chances? We got to make sure that we're taking risks and also celebrating. Somebody took a risk on this big show or took a swing and it didn't work, but that's okay. We learned something from it.
This enthusiasm for experimentation around new content also carries over to how they think about new revenue streams.
Since you've been co-CEO, Netflix has started doing a range of things that Netflix always said it was never going to do. Advertising, live, and sports are the three biggest ones.
Yeah.
You're doing all of those things now.
Yeah.
What made you change your mind?
Things change. Either the conditions change or your insights change. For me, the advertising one, I always looked at it like we were counter-positioning against television by saying no ads. So we attracted all the people who are really irritated by ads. Everyone is not irritated by ads. And in fact, young people, they'll take a lower price to watch advertising because that's what they grew up on.
But when you think about all this within the context of a company that's about innovation, how do you think about using things like Never Say Never as a tool to continue fostering experimentation and innovation?
It's you farming for dissent, which is part of the original culture that is alive and well at Netflix. Meaning you have to create an environment where people can say there are no sacred cows here. And that I know how you feel about this, Ted, but how about this? And people know that that's not a career ender. In fact, it's a great way to position yourself as a curious thinker inside of our business is if you challenge conventional wisdom. Because I think Netflix was built by challenging conventional wisdom on almost everything.
It's this unconventional approach that's helped make Netflix a streaming giant, and Sarandos hopes prepared the company to weather any storm.
I was curious to hear that you don't read management books, but you read books and you take leadership and management lessons from them. What is the book that you return to that you think is the most powerful lessons for leadership?
So there's a book that I've read multiple times, probably 20 years ago for the first time, which was Joseph Conrad's Typhoon. Doesn't sound like a management book on the surface, but I think it's the most powerful leadership story I've ever read. And I read it over and over again because I find where I'm at in my level of maturity as a leader, I consume it differently. I get something different out of that book every time I read it. My first reading of it is this guy was a hot dog and put everyone's life in jeopardy, and he's reckless. And then now what I see is that when you go through life, when you go through business, you make a lot of decisions that don't turn out the way you thought they would. And the real leadership test is how do you manage through that?
What's it like working for Ted, and what do you think his leadership superpower is?
I'd say his superpower is Ted really can see very clearly in the future. He can really look past all of the ways traditional things are happening and doesn't sort of take that noise in and can see really clearly, like, years out. Like,